Well, that was pretty brutal to watch, wasn't it? Obviously, the full 5 points for South Africa. No one is surprised about that. Another tough day for Romania. Crikey. It's pretty harsh on them, isn't it? Being number, 19 in the world and being in a pool with, 1, 2 and 5. That's pretty rough. So yes, I'm going to talk about South Africa versus Romania. Although, because there's no jeopardy in the result, I think the most important thing is what questions and what answers we have as we look ahead to Ireland, South Africa next weekend, which I cannot tell you how excited I am to watch. I'm going to be in Paris for that one, so I'll bring you all sorts of coverage in the build up to and during and after that as well. I'll be in Paris with a load of Irish and South African fans, I'm sure, who will be passionate outside the stadium. I'm very much looking forward to that. And so yeah, please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe on the channel. Give this video a thumbs up because it really helps. And leave your comments as well to these questions, particularly if you're a South African fan, but I'll be interested in your opinion regardless. Who does South Africa call up to their squad to replace Malcolm Marx? Obviously, that was the big negative coming into this, and it's still a bit of a shock, I think, to a lot of South African fans that one of their talisman, one of their big leaders, one of the best players in the world is not going to be available for them for the rest of the World Cup. But I guess these challenges for one player presents opportunities for others. And Rassie Erasmus and Jack Nienaber have got a decision to make, haven't they? And on the strength of what we saw today, with Dean Fourie, with Marco van Staden getting a bit of time at hooker, with Faf de Klerk getting a bit of time at fly half, what do you do? What would you do? Who do you select? What's the decision? Because, well, Andre Pollard played half an hour on Friday night for his club against Sale Sharks in a, wasn't the Premiership, but in a domestic game nonetheless, cup competition. So he's clearly fit enough to take the field. Do you take the risk on that? Do you roll the dice on that? I would think Andre Pollard is one of the best fly halves in the world. I also think he's exactly the kind of player you want available to you when it gets to knockout games, when a kick might be all the difference between one team winning and one team losing. Marnie Lebok does some amazing things. Andre Pollard, he's got to be a very tempting shout. However, can you take that risk at hooker? Can you bank on Bongo and Mbonambi playing every minute of the big games? South Africa's still got to play Scotland and Ireland, let's not forget. And Dean Fourie offers so much around the park, doesn't he? He's an amazing jackler. And it's incredible. What was that? Was that really his World Cup debut, age 38? That in itself is an amazing story. But I don't know if South Africa can just keep throwing to the front of the line out all game against a team like Ireland or Scotland or whoever else they may face on the quest to retain their world title. I don't know if they can do that. So potentially they're seeing enough in training to have confidence that they can be more ambitious with their line-out moves, but they kept things understandably very simple today. And I don't know, it's rolling the dice or taking a risk, isn't it? The safe choice is to pick a hooker. The bold choice that could backfire, but could also win you a World Cup, is to select Andre Pollard. And I honestly don't know what they're going to do. I suspect pick a hooker, that would be my guess. Tell me what you think, leave your comments. And I have to say, just before I get into any sort of substantive part of the game, South Africa are just a fun team to watch. The 7-1 splits, the flankers playing at hooker, the lights from the coach's box. It's just a fun side to watch. There's always something going on to make life very interesting with South Africa. So that's one question. Who do you select into your squad to replace Malcolm Marx? Because surely that decision has got to be made any day now. I've heard rumours about it being tomorrow, but we'll see. The other question is, who from the side today that didn't play against Scotland, or who in the South African squad that didn't play against Scotland makes it into the side to play against Ireland? Because possibly no one. That may well be the answer. The only one I'm sort of contemplating that I think maybe deserves it is Andre Esterhuizen. I love the way he's playing. I mean, Damien Dialende is quite often overlooked the things he's really good at because he just makes some of the tough stuff look so easy. Just making hard yards, just tidying up ball, being being the glue for a team. So I don't want to knock what he does, but I just the upside of Andre Esterhazen, his ceiling seems higher possibly than Damien Dialande's. That's just my thought. I'd love to know what you think on that as well. Didn't see quite enough of Kane and Moody to suggest that he will get into the starting team. And Villy Leroux was the other one that I was watching thinking he might make the starting side at fullback. But again, I'm not sure we quite saw enough of Villy Leroux. Hard to judge on a game like that, isn't it? As for the game, it looked after the start like being a three-figure job. And Romania actually did quite a good job to keep it under a point a minute. Yeah, it's tough watching that. It's hard to know what anyone gets out of a game like that. But I guess it's inevitable at this level when the very top teams and the very poorest teams are together. Rugby's not at a place yet where there are 20 very good teams. It's great to see Uruguay and Portugal giving great accounts of themselves. I hope here in Nice, Japan do the same against England later. But yeah, that was tough to watch. But yeah, Romania, after a really, really bad start and a good start for South Africa, at least did steady the ship a bit. It was almost like they used their weather joker. Is that a thing? Maybe they ordered the rain for a little bit of help, and that did seem to stem the tide a bit. They had some good scrums. Their maul defence was all right at times. Their 15 looks good. There's something about these tier 2 players and their fullbacks. They're looking quite good in this tournament. They got as close as you can get to scoring without actually scoring. But that's really all I can say about Romania. Their team, when you look at it, is quite old. Unlike the Uruguayan team seems quite young, same with a lot of the Portugal team. You're sort of quite positive about where they could be in 4 years' time. This Romania team feels like maybe they won't be at the next World Cup unless there's some new players coming through. It's a tough one. As for South Africa, again, it's really hard to judge them based on that because it was such a comfortable win. But Cobus Reinach, the commentators always mention that his dad's a sprinter, but you can understand why they mentioned it when he was just as rapid as he was. And the speed of this South Africa side, that balance between power and speed is frightening. And again, just makes me so excited for next week. The slickness in the organisation of Ireland's attack and the toughness of their pack up against that same toughness of the South African pack and the absolute dynamite explosive speed of the South African backline, it just makes that such an interesting matchup. I think a lot of the talk this week on this channel was going to be about just building up to that game, because I think it's quite conceivable, based on what we've seen so far, and there's a lot of twists and turns, not least in the quarterfinals, where South Africa and Ireland, if they get to the quarterfinals, are going to find life very, very hard against France or New Zealand. But based purely on what we've seen so far, it would be what the game we're going to see, Ireland-South Africa, would be a worthy World Cup final, and could well be, because they're going to avoid each other in the quarter and the semis, aren't they? After all, if they manage to make it to that stage, so this could just be a little bit of a warm-up for a World Cup final. I know there's a lot to happen between now and then, and no fan or coach or player will be thinking in those terms. I'm just speculating based on what I've seen, because that's what this channel's about. I can just chat rugby like we would if we were down the pub having a drink. So I could go into depth on South Africa, but I don't know if there's a great deal of use in that. I think those two questions at the start are more interesting. Who that didn't start against Scotland gets in for the Ireland game? And I think the answer to that is possibly nobody into the starting 15, except for, of course, Bongi and Benambi, because of Malcolm Marx' injury. And on Malcolm Marx' injury, who comes in? Is it a hooker, Joseph Dweba maybe, or do you roll the dice on Andre Pollard? What would you do? There we go. Other than that, an absolute beatdown that I hope is not replicated later. As much as I'm an Englishman, I want the World Cup to be entertaining. I want to reach out to new fans. I'm not totally sure that games like the one we just saw today do that, albeit you have to hold your hands up. And much like Ireland against Tonga last night, you have to say South Africa are a very, very impressive rugby team. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe on the channel. Hit like, leave your comments. I'll see you on the next one.